new technologies that have produced a boom in natural gas discoveries in the U.S. have also produced new restrictions in some parts of the country because of the chemicals involved. As the process known as hydraulic fracturing comes under increasing scrutiny, Oklahoma regulators are touting efforts to be more open about the fluids that are used to break open shale reserves. But that openness comes with limitations.
There's no disputing the fact that hydraulic fracturing, or fracking as it's more commonly known, has greatly spurred natural gas production. According to the Energy Information Administration, shale gas production has increased 12-fold over the past decade and is expected to account for nearly half of all U.S. natural gas production by the year 2035. The process of fracking involves a mixture of water, sand, and chemicals pumped into the earth at high pressure to create cracks and fissures in the surrounding rock. Natural gas producers say the fracking fluid is about 90% water, 9% sand, and less than 1% additional chemicals. But it's that 1% that is causing the controversy.
I mean, when you think about a carcinogen or a very dangerous toxic chemical, at what percentage does it become dangerous? 1% of the massive amount of fluids they are injecting into these wells can be immensely dangerous. And we just don't have the right information right now to know what those chemicals are.
David Ocam is director of the Sierra Club's Oklahoma chapter. He says the organization has serious concerns about fracking.
The Sierra Club's position regarding hydraulic fracturing is quite simple. We want to make sure that it is as regulated and as safe as humanly possible, and we believe currently it is not.
Those concerns are epitomized by this video from the HBO documentary Gasland, which shows people lighting their water on fire. Critics maintain drilling for natural gas is responsible for the presence of methane gas and other chemicals in the water. The Department of Energy last year conducted a review of the natural gas industry and safety practices. The agency cited 4 main areas of concern from shale gas production, including possible pollution of drinking water, air pollution, community disruption, and possible adverse impacts on communities and ecosystems. Oklahoma U.S. Senator Jim Inhofe has been quick to defend the industry and argues the administration is targeting natural gas producers in an effort to kill fossil fuels.
As I've mentioned many times before, I know a little bit about this because the first hydraulic fracturing took place in my state of Oklahoma in 1949. There's never been a documented case of groundwater contamination as a result of it, and yet this administration is doing everything they can to destroy hydraulic fracturing.
Researchers at the University of Texas recently completed a study of hydraulic fracturing in an effort to answer questions about groundwater contamination. The report from the Energy Institute concluded there was no direct evidence that fracking itself was contaminating the water, but the Institute's Dr. Charles Grote says that doesn't let the industry off the hook.
Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't ways for fracture fluids or produced waters or flowback waters to get into groundwater supplies. And that brings us closer to the surface than where hydraulic fracturing takes place. So we see those pits at the surface. We see well casings that perhaps were not properly prepared. We see leaks at the surface or trucks that roll over that can put fluids from the process into surface water and into groundwater.
Then there's the matter of just what's in those chemicals. Oklahoma recently joined 6 other states to now require natural gas producers to disclose the chemicals involved in fracking. Lori Rotenberry is the former head of the Oklahoma Corporation Commission's Oil and Gas Conservation Division. She says companies can provide that information directly to the commission or use the Frac Focus website created last year by the Groundwater Protection Council and the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission.
Those 2 associations worked together to develop the Frac Focus website as a way of providing information to the public about hydraulic fracturing operations and in particular about the chemicals that are used in hydraulic fracturing operations.
The Sierra Club's David Ocam calls that a good first step, but is greatly troubled by an exemption in the current rules for so-called proprietary chemicals.
Right now, there is a blanket trade secrets exemption that unless you show specific cause through a contempt hearing or you have a medical need, you cannot see those chemicals. That is not acceptable for us. We believe, just like the beverage industry, which relies on trade secrets, the gas industry, too, can release all of the chemicals.
OCAM also questions the rule which says the information about fracking chemicals does not have to be disclosed until 60 days after the well has been drilled. He says landowners have a right to know in advance what's going to be injected in those wells.
The landowners can then conduct tests on exactly what the current status is and then go in and test after the frack job was completed to see exactly if there were any changes. So we think it's vital that they get advance notice on what's going in to test for those specific chemicals.
That brings into question whether federal regulations are necessary to protect public safety. A House subcommittee chaired by Oklahoma Representative James Langford held hearings on the issue in May. Rotenberry testified before that committee, insisting that state regulatory programs are sufficient.
They are comprehensive, they are continually improving, and I think you can summarize them by saying they're strong, they're responsive, they're flexible, and they're adaptive. And for all of those reasons, I believe they're effective in ensuring that hydraulic fracturing operations are conducted safely.
Last year, a total of 2,381 wells were completed in Oklahoma, of which 1,943 were fracked. Oklahoma has a total of 58 field inspectors who are responsible for overseeing all of those wells and ensuring that state laws are followed. Rotenberry concedes that may not be enough.
We are continually assessing where the activity is occurring and whether we have sufficient staff assigned to those areas to implement the regulatory program effectively, and it's an ongoing challenge.
OCAM takes it a step further.
That is absolutely not enough. 58 field inspectors is not enough to regulate the amount of activity going on in Oklahoma today.
He argues the only way to ensure the public safety is for uniform federal standards to be put in place.
Different states are going to have different regulatory agencies in place. Some are going to be stronger than others, some are going to be fairer than others. And we need one national unified standard to ensure that everyone's water, everyone's air is safe.
And he says pollution does not respect state boundaries.
When we're talking about a watershed like the Ogallala, we're talking about multiple states in play here, so we need a national framework in order to regulate that.
Landowners have also questioned how responsive the Corporation Commission is to complaints about oil and gas producers. Jerry Logan owns an exotic deer farm north of Guthrie where 7 wells have been fracked.
If I have problems with my water wells, from their fracking, from their wells, who's going to be responsible for that? What are they going to do? How am I going to have water here if they run my water well?
He says he's taken several complaints before the commission, but has lost each time. Logan hasn't yet seen evidence that his wells have been contaminated. Still, he says he would just as soon see the frackers go away.
I would pay them to keep out. I don't want their money. All I want is to be left alone. Leave my property alone.
Logan can't stop the drilling because he does not own all the mineral rights under his property. In Oklahoma, as long as a majority of owners gives permission to drill, other owners have no recourse. Meanwhile, a growing number of states have either placed outright bans on hydraulic fracturing or have placed moratoriums on the technology, pending further research into the impact the chemicals and used fracking water have on the environment.